Everything you need to know about an English ATAR exam on one page. That's what you're going to get in this lesson.
Everything you need to easily pass English ATAR. English ATAR made simple. Powered by Saints Coaching.
What are English ATAR exams? Depending on when you're watching this, you've either done 2, 3, or maybe even 4 of these bad boys. Either way, this thing is a bit of an eyesore. I'm going to take it off. Much better. As I was looking into the equipment that I needed to film this course, I'd read somewhere that this thingy was meant to be good because it reduced some of those p sounds that sometimes the microphone picks up. Quite frankly, it was pissing me off. Hopefully, the audio for this lesson sounds okay. If it does, I'll continue without this thing because it was getting in the way, and now I've got more freedom, more space to express myself without this thing. Where was I? Either way, you've probably got a pretty decent idea of what English ATAR exams are like. This lesson is going to provide a brief overview of an English ATAR exam, so we're on the same page. Plus, I'll go over some of my own ways that I use to break the exam down into some special categories. And having knowledge of those categories will make going through the course just a little bit easier. Before we dive in, I just want to note that most of the information that we're about to go through, it either quotes or paraphrases this. What is this? It's the examination design brief from the syllabus document, and it's from page 15 of the syllabus. Lesson objective, just the one today, nice and easy. We're going to understand the need to know information of English ATAR exams. What is that need to know info? Firstly, and probably most importantly, we need to know what the sections of the exam are. Section 1, comprehending section, section 2, responding, and then section 3, composing. How long does SCARSA, the people who create the syllabus, recommend that you spend on each section of the exam? Comprehending section, they recommend you spend 60 minutes. For the responding, 60 minutes, and for the composing, 60 minutes. What about the English ATAR made simple suggested working time? It's nothing drastically different from what SCARSA recommends, but it does have a few minor tweaks, and I believe those tweaks are actually quite significant. The comprehending section, I recommend spending 55 minutes, so that's 5 minutes less than SCARSA's recommendation. For the responding, I recommend spending 70 minutes, 10 minutes more than SCARSA's recommendation. And then for the composing, I recommend spending 5 minutes less than SCARSA's recommendation. Why do I recommend spending this amount of time on each section? It really has to do with weighting. And as we can see, the comprehending section, it's weighted 30%. The responding, it's weighted 40%, and then the composing is weighted 30% again. I recommend spending the most time on the responding section because it's worth the most amount of marks. In my mind, it doesn't really make sense to spend 60 minutes on all 3 sections of the exam when they're not all weighted equally. In my mind, it makes sense to spend equal amounts of time on sections that are weighted equally. If the comprehending section is weighted 30% and then the composing section is weighted 30%, it makes sense to spend equal amounts of time on those. Further, if the responding section is weighted 40%, 10% more than the other 2 sections, to me, it just makes more sense to spend a little bit more time on that. I'll go into more of the rationale behind the suggested working times in Module 6, but that's really the crux of the reason. Now let's have a look at how many questions you have to answer in each section of the exam. In the comprehending section, you've just got to answer 2. From 2016 to 2021, you had to answer 3 questions, so the comprehending section has been made easier for you. I'll discuss more about the changes to the comprehending section that were made in 2022 when we get to Module 3. What about the responding section? You need to answer 1 question and you've got a choice of 6. Then for the composing section, again, 1 question and you've got a choice of between 4 or 5. At the time of presenting, every WACE exam since 2016, when your syllabus was introduced, has had 5 questions in the composing section, but the syllabus does mention that there can be either 4 or 5, something to bear in mind. Question requirements. What does each question require you to do? According to SCARSA, the comprehending section, the questions there can require a candidate, you, to comprehend and analyze unseen, written, and visual texts, and respond concisely. Take a mental note of that term, respond concisely. We'll be returning to it in Module 3 and the subsequent modules. By the end of the course, you'll probably be just a little bit sick of it, but it does bear a lot of importance. What about the responding section? Those questions can require the candidate, you, to demonstrate analytical and critical thinking skills in relation to studied texts. Then the composing section. These questions require you to demonstrate writing skills by choosing forms of writing appropriate to specific audiences, contexts, and purposes. Also take a mental note of those last three words: audiences, contexts, and purposes. They form the foundation for doing well in the composing section, and we'll get into that in Module 2 and then also return to it in Module 5. There are two overarching categories that the three sections of the exam fall within. I've created these categories to make understanding an English ATAR exam easier, but SCASA doesn't use this system of categorization. This is special English ATAR made simple content. Why are we going to use this system of categorization? It's a simple way to understand the similarities and differences between the three sections of the exam. And as you know, we're all about doing things simply in English ATAR made simple. The comprehending section, that is an analytical section. Similarly, the responding section is an analytical section, and then the composing section is a creative section. What does this stuff mean? Why are these categories used? For the comprehending section, the questions require you to analyze text. In the responding section, the questions require you to analyze text. And in the composing section, the questions require you to create text. Text type is the type of text that you need to write in each section. In the comprehending section, you need to write analytical text. It's essentially 2 mini essays. In the responding section, you need to write an analytical text, and that's 1 full essay. And in the composing section, you need to write either a persuasive, imaginative, or interpretive text. Answer length. How much should you write for each section? No doubt you or a mate have asked one of your teachers this over the years at school, and your teacher has probably responded saying something like, "How long is a piece of string?" The answer is understandable to an extent, but it's extremely unhelpful. So the following information is a good guide, but it doesn't mean that you can write a response less than what I've recommended and still get a great mark, or write a response more than I've recommended and still get a great mark. We'll also have a more extensive chat about answer length in Module 4 when we start getting into the nitty-gritty of the responding section. The comprehending section, you'll be writing roughly 3 to 4 pages in total, and each response is 200 to 300 words in length. Just to clarify, 3 to 4 pages in total means across your 2 responses. So that's not 3 to 4 pages per response, which means that each response will be roughly 1.5 to 2 pages. Obviously, the number of pages varies based on how big your writing is, but it's just a solid guide. Also, this 200 to 300 words per response is directly taken from the syllabus. In other words, SCASA recommends that each response you write in the comprehending section is between 200 to 300 words. What about the responding section? The responding section, I recommend roughly 3 to 5 pages. The composing section, same as the responding, roughly 3 to 5 pages. By the way, an important point, these suggestions don't factor in planning. Planning is separate to the length of your answer. Next up is the text, which refers to the nature of the text that you'll write in each section of the exam. How is this different from the text type that we just looked at a few moments ago? The text type is the type of text that you'll actually write. The text is the type of text that you'll analyze. In the comprehending section, you'll be analyzing one written text, and the other text will either be a written text, a visual text, or a multimodal text. And a multimodal text in the comprehending section just means that it has visual and written elements. In the responding section, you'll be analyzing really any text. Any text really refers to the text that you have studied in class or will be studying in class in English ATAR. In the composing section, not applicable. As we know now, the composing section falls into the creative category of exam sections. You're not required to analyze any text there. Text number refers to how many texts in a given section you have to analyze and whether they're unseen or seen. In the comprehending section, 2 unseen texts. In the responding section, 1 or 2 study texts, depending on whether you answer a comparison question. And in the composing section, not applicable again, you're not analyzing any text there. However, in the composing section, if you choose a question that requires reference to an image or a quote, you obviously need to pay careful attention to the wording of that question so you can engage with that image or quote accordingly. Miscellaneous, just a few other random comments that I wanted to note about the sections of the exam. Comprehending section, one question can require a comparison between both texts. However, between 2016 and 2021, of the 18 comprehending section questions that were in all of those WACE exams in total, only 2 of those questions required a comparison between texts. I guess you could say it's unlikely that you'll get a comparison question in the comprehending section based on that statistic, but nonetheless, be aware that you can get one. Also, the questions in the comprehending section, question 1 and question 2, they're weighted equally. Both are worth 15 marks, and 1 mark in the exam is worth 1%. That's why the comprehending section is weighted 30%. Responding section. At least one question allows you to compare two study texts. Every WACE exam between 2016 and 2021 has had at least one question in the responding section that allows you to compare two study texts. Spoiler alert for Module 4, I advise against answering comparison questions. Why play tennis with 2 balls if you've got the option to just play with 1? Lastly, the composing section. Every WACE exam between 2016 and 2021 has had at least one question in the composing section that's allowed you to choose any text type, meaning it's allowed you to write either a persuasive text, imaginative text, or interpretive text. An example of one of those questions, or an instance of one of those questions, normally has the phrase in a form of your choice. What that means is that you're allowed to choose whether you want to answer that question by writing a persuasive text, an interpretive text, or an imaginative text. We'll discuss more about that in Module 5. That is all I wanted to say about English ATAR exams for now. And I also wanted to congratulate you on finishing Module 1 of English ATAR Made Simple. I hope that you found the information interesting, or at the very least useful. The goal of this module was to get you to change your mind about English ATAR. If you've listened carefully to the content in this module, you've done the goal and habit contract, I really believe that change has started to take place. I'm honestly so proud of your progress in getting to this point in the course. I know it might not seem like much, but completing the first module is a big deal. It means that you are well on your way to passing English ATAR. Well done. Make sure you reward yourself for completing Module 1. It might not seem like this huge milestone, but it really is. And if you give yourself these rewards for making progress through the course and making progress through anything, it motivates you to continue doing the thing. Me personally, I'm going to go and get chunky. Before we start focusing on each section of the exam, we need to understand the key concepts of the English ATAR syllabus. That means it's time to start Module 2. That means it's time to master the Bibles. I can't wait to see you in the first lesson in Module 2. Until then, keep it simple.